For those of you who think we're in another health crisis, because of course it's winter time and the NHS doesn't seem to know how to deal with it, there are lots of things we need to talk about, particularly how some members of the media and how some people in authority, particularly in the NHS and particularly in the world of politics, think that we should go back to the bad old days of COVID and put masks on and start social distancing and stay at home and shut schools down and not let anybody talk to each other and tell children that they're going to kill their grandmothers. I kid you not, that's what's going on. So we thought we'd better talk to an authority on all of this. And he's a man that I've known tangentially in the past through our sets of children who were at school together, strangely enough, in Sussex many years ago. He is Mike Fairclough. He's known as Britain's most outspoken headmaster, but he also has become an author. And Mike, you're now pretty much a pioneer, I would say, in the world of what I would call sensible healthcare and sensible medicine and sensible behaviour. Welcome to the show and very good morning to you.
Good morning to you too. Yes, thank you for that introduction. I don't think it's difficult to be on the sensible side if you just apply a bit of critical thinking and rational logic. I mean, it really is that simple. But of course, the UK government did a real number on the British public with its plethora of various things which comprise the censorship industrial complex. So, of course, during the COVID years, we had the 77th Brigade, a unit of the British Army. We even had a unit of the RAF, the counter-disinformation unit, which worked in liaison with MI5 and MI6, the rapid response unit, etc. And then, of course, the nudge unit, the psychological nudge unit, which was all of these guys were steering public opinion, crushing dissent, censoring online debate, etc. So those people who were susceptible to that sort of brainwashing, which I've got this kind of figure that it's around 75%. I think it's about 3/4 of people, just on my own sort of anecdotal analysis. Most people are susceptible to that stuff. But then, of course, it was a military grade psyop. Usually that kind of stuff would be used on Al-Qaeda and ISIS, and the UK government decided to use it on us instead. So anyway, those of us who are kind of immune to that kind of manipulation just looked and applied a bit of logic and saw that the measures that were in place during COVID were tyrannical, to say the least. And of course, it's all come back again, and it's sad actually to see that some people have started putting masks on out of fear or conformity, or because they just believe that they work. It's COVID part 2.
Yeah, it's mad, isn't it? Because I would have hoped that because of the people that I spoke to during that time, who just were never going to be fooled again. I think I'm hoping that there's fewer people now who would be falling for these measures, because at the time, many people did what they were told by the government because they assumed the government were doing good things. They assumed the government had their best interests at heart, when it turned out that actually that wasn't the case at all.
Yeah. So these sorts of things play on people's good nature, and it's the same with any of the orthodoxies, whether it's gender ideology or climate alarmism or any of it, vaccines, any of this stuff, war with Russia, whatever it might be. They'll always try and present things as being, if you're in favour of the orthodoxy, then you're on the good side and you're kind and you're a nice human being. And if you're not, you are immediately far right, and that means racist and on the extremely bad side. It was just to say as well. So when COVID actually kicked off, I thought it was a real national and international disaster. So I remember driving my car and hearing Boris Johnson on the radio saying many of us will lose loved ones, and I actually went back to my school and sent an email to my staff and to the parents of the school saying, look, until we know what's going on, maybe you'd like to keep your children at home, because we'd just been told by the Prime Minister that people were actually going to die. And it was really interesting because the same people who later criticised me for having the complete opposite view were highly critical of me suggesting that parents could keep their children at home. And the reason for that was because the direction hadn't come from the authorities. And what we noticed during the COVID era is that if somebody on the BBC or in the NHS or anyone who's like in Parliament or wearing a suit says do X, Y, or Z, lots of people will follow that particular order. And of course, there was that the famous Milgram experiment from I think the 50s or 60s, which showed exactly that people will go along with incredibly dangerous ideologies and actions based on their sort of adoration of people in authority. So it was interesting. That was what happened initially. And then because I was in a school of 365 children, but 150 of them were actually in the school during the COVID era, during the lockdowns.
Right.
And I had about 30 out of my 60 members of staff. So I was around about 200 people every single day. And after about 3 weeks of noticing that no one was dropping down dead, and also hearing from parents who worked in the local hospital that was practically empty,
Right.
That's when the penny dropped. But it was only really when I voiced my concerns about the COVID vaccine rollout to children that I became absolutely public enemy number one.
Yeah. And that was when it started to get really, really tricky, I think, for an awful lot of parents, because, you know, my kids were in Sussex, I was in London. I didn't see them for about 8 weeks right at the beginning of the whole COVID business, because their mother wasn't too sure if I should come out of the city, where everybody thought the COVID was much more kind of concentrated. I wasn't sure, even though I was working every day, going into a studio at Talk Radio, but I didn't know if I drove my car outside of the M25 that I might be stopped by the cops, even though I had an essential workers badge, like something out of East Berlin. I was going, no, I'm an essential worker.